former Public Enterprises Minister Malusi Gigaba, who was ordered to appear in court later this week on corruption charges linked to the Transnet procurement scandal. And, of course, joining us to expand the conversation and also looking at other factors around Minister Samkelo having handed over devices. We are joined in studio with my colleagues, SABC senior political reporter Samkelo Maseko, continuing the conversation. And now our new guest, ANC National spokesperson Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri, joining us. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Looking at the two big stories, I mean, it looks like, surely if it doesn't rain, it pours for the ANC at this point in time. Two very senior party leaders making headlines in a single day for what many would say are the wrong reasons. What is your perspective of that? I mean, as we talk about two very prominent names.
And in this instance, you're referring to Minister Samkelo having handed over his devices and gadgets.
Yes.
We believe it's the correct thing because this is in compliance with the instruction by the ANC to all of its members to make sure that they make themselves available to the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee to comply fully, to clear their names, and to ensure that in so doing, they protect the name of the ANC, because those are individual issues that they have to deal with.
And also just speaking of another senior name, Malusi Gigaba, also making headlines this week in allegations around the Transnet matter, which in itself, speaks volumes. What is your perspective about that?
Well, we're not doing any running commentary really on the matter of Malusi Gigaba, given the fact that the developments are of such a nature that he presented himself to IDAC. Mm-hmm. And I'm not certain that IDAC has arresting powers, but IDAC does prosecutions, does investigation. We can only opine comprehensively when this matter takes another shape. At this stage, we want everyone, as I said, everyone that is being called on by law enforcement and by the entire justice system to comply and to respect that. And I did see a tweet or a post on Instagram by himself suggesting that he is following on what the ANC expects of all of its members.
In fact, let me bring in Dr. Levi Ndo, who's a political analyst. Dr. Ndo, just before the break, you spoke quite significantly about how it's really important that the lines are not blurred. And in fact, Samkelo, you also spoke about that one minister or senior leader should not have ventured into a certain space. And that in itself being a massive lesson when we try and define roles and there's an understanding on what a certain leader can do and cannot do.
Indeed, good afternoon, Mbengu, and indeed the viewers at home. There appears to be no clear lines of responsibilities. And what we're constantly observing is that to a certain extent, ministers will therefore be blamed for an overreach in terms of their responsibilities. And also at the same time, these are the very same ministers who must go all out and report about the activities that are taking place in the different portfolios in which they are assigned to work. And you also have got instances where there are situations where there is just a lack of cooperation from administrators, and that creates a situation where the work of the department is negatively affected. And I think it is very obvious now that these clear lines are supposed to be well defined and well explained so that we don't have a situation that we're going to have administrators and politicians blaming each other. But what is supposed to be very central is that the work of the department should go on, and there should be ways and means in which administrators and politicians should always be able to find one another in the interest of cohesion in the different departments.
Yeah. What's your take on this, Samkelo?
Perhaps it's time South Africans have an honest and frank discussion. Is the current separation of powers between the executive and the administration working? For too many times, South Africans tend to think politicians are the problem when it comes to the governance of the country. Yeah. And no particular focus is given to the administrators. And who are the ones who've got the signing power? Who are the ones who have the procurement powers? Unlike the executive. I'm not speaking on behalf of the executive, but I'm just saying we need to drill down to say that who and where is the actual problem. Is it with the policy makers or is it with the administrators who've got to perform the functions? Because in many instances, when you look at these corruption cases, you look at a Transnet, for example, you look at how this particular tender of locomotives ballooned from 30 billion rands going to 70 billion rands. You look at the individuals associated with the corruption at the state-owned parastatals, moving from Transnet, going to Eskom, the likes of Anuj Singh, the likes of Brian Molefe, the likes of Siyabonga Gama, and the alleged corruption that seems to have been done during their tenure. You just oppose it to Eskom. You look at Andam Teto, who's the board chair of the power utility Eskom, for an example, and you look at the many wrong things that were done at the power utility Eskom, to the likes of Bhengu-Motsiri, who's the current head of generation at Eskom, during the various tenures at Eskom that have taken place, of the various chief executive officers that have been there at the power utility, and the problems that have been at the individual coal-powered stations that have been performing badly. And then you just oppose it to the role of the politicians in this whole saga of corruption within the country. I think we tend to pay too much focus on the executive authority and less focus on the administrative authority, where about 60% or 70% of the actual problem emanates from. And you just look at the recent lifestyle audits that were conducted by Premier Panyaza Lesufi in Gauteng, and what has come out of those particular audits, and what has been done to the executives and the accounting authorities of administrators within the province of the various departments. That is where the problem is within South Africa, that we've got to drill down to that specific issue, but also the bad deployment that political parties do. And that just cuts across political parties, not just the ANC. You look at the DA, for an example, at this point in time. They want to remove Dr. Dion George as the Minister of Environment and Fisheries within the country. What has he done wrong within that particular department? Is it the administrators that are failing to perform the work that he wants them to do, or he's the one who's actually failing? We need to look at those various issues. Look into the city of Cape Town. City of Cape Town, there are various investigations currently ongoing where corruption is only pointed at other provinces within the country, and there's no particular focus in one area, where you've got a number of contracts that are currently being investigated, where the SIU has raided and the police have raided some of the official offices within the metro of Cape Town. And that just tells you that the problem is with the administrators, and the executive, the politicians, also play a significant role.
Yeah, absolutely. With politicians, I mean, the ANC has described an internal renewal and cleanup agenda. How does now the party reconcile that position with a senior NEC member now coming under investigation for alleged corruption, as we try and get a sense of the blurred lines here in defining roles?
Well, from our perspective, there are no blurred lines. It's literally black and white. What we have stated to our South Africans that we are doing in terms of renewing and rebuilding the African National Congress and ensuring that what we spoke about in the 90s, which was called the RDP of the soul, where your conscience directs you as a member of the ANC about doing that which you know is just, is fair, is right. And we are very clear. We are very unambiguous. I'm going to use the example of Thabang Makwetla, who stepped aside some weeks ago after being charged for a particular, matter where that puts him in conflict with the law. We expect everyone to behave in that manner. And unfortunately, our constitution enjoins us to ensure that also those that are charged are given the first space to ventilate their issues in the courts of law. And the ANC does not have a right, or any other entity doesn't have a right to prejudge a process that has not been concluded. But our constitution says that as soon as you are charged, that step-aside policy was introduced as a way of demonstrating to society that we are serious about a fight against corruption where our members are involved. And I must say, corruption in South Africa is not ANC corruption. We will continue to insist on that narrative. We will say it until cows come home. Mm-hmm. There is corruption everywhere. There's corporate corruption that is running amok without any oversight or any monitoring of that by mainstream media in particular.
Before we let you go, and I'm actually being pressed to let you go, but you talk about
that's a pity.
Corruption. Yes, it is a pity. You talk about corruption. And, you know, elections are around the corner. In terms of reputational damage, what do you make of all these allegations that we're hearing when we look about the significance of what 2026 will be for the ANC?
Let me start with the latter.
Yes.
We are going to be fighting this local government election with all our might, with all our history, with all our collected 113 years of experience, and with all our collected experience in governance that nobody else has in this country. Mm-hmm. We will demonstrate to South Africans that the ANC is committed to the fight against crime and corruption. We will demonstrate, we are demonstrating to South Africans that the ANC is serious about meeting basic needs, or otherwise what is called service delivery. We can only come back here and give you a dossier of a lot of work that our councillors are doing on the ground, including fixing the big cities. eThekwini is not the eThekwini of 2 years ago. Johannesburg is shifting and turning around, fixing Johannesburg,
but
working
at this
with the
stage,
people.
if you'll allow me, just pardon my interruption, the disciplinary and political measures, you know, what do you, as the ANC, consider appropriate for ANC members facing serious corruption allegations? Because, I mean, you speak about the step aside, and we're seeing these big names coming to the fore. What do you consider NEC members facing serious corruption allegations?
Well, we have the Integrity Commission that is doing its work, and it does its work quietly and makes pronouncements. We have a disciplinary policy in the ANC that is guided by our constitution, but we have to follow that due process because you also don't want to be litigated when you work outside of your constitution. I also do urge SABC to shine a spotlight on the corruption that is going on in the Western Cape, where we don't hear you talking about that. We don't hear you talking about the raids that have taken place in the homes of very senior politicians in the Western Cape that are having their fingers in the till that belongs to the people of the Western Cape. But I'm not there.
I think Samkelo just did mention some of the corruption
yes,
happening
but I'm not there. We focused on building the organization. Yeah. We focused on demonstrating that we're serious about service delivery. Go to Mohale City and go and have a look at the work that is being done there. Go to many parts of South Africa. Nelson Mandela Bay, the blue flag is up in the beaches because of that cleanliness being made ready for people to be able to enjoy their festive season. Those are some of the stories that are not being told because there's this narrative that is driven by strong PR specialists that are linked to the establishment. And if when I say the establishment, I'm talking about right-wing formations in our country. Just a few days ago, if I may, just a few days ago, 2 right-wing activists that belong to AfriForum and Solidarity were arrested in Rustenburg for vandalism of local infrastructure. And apparently they've been doing that for years. So the local government fixes and they vandalize. They were arrested. That story is nowhere in the news. And so we challenge the newsrooms also to smell your own armpits about the balance with which reportage around wrongdoing is concerned.
I'm going to have to interrupt you, and thank you for your time. And I would like for us to come back to this point of discussion that you were trying to emphasize here, to expand it a little bit further. So we are inviting you to really unpack that and really explore that. I would have liked my colleague Samkelo Maseko to also come in there, because you know, you say something about what we're not covering, and he makes mention that we are covering it, and as he looked at the scope of the political sphere. But I do thank you for your time, Dr. Levin Dore, political analyst. Thank you for your time. Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri, ANC national spokesperson, as well as Samkelo Maseko, SABC senior political reporter.